there's a huge portion of the population thinking certain things that they wouldn't dare say out loud. And then this man shows up and says them, and doesn't just say them, adamantly says them, stands behind them, shouts them from the top of a mountain. So the first question I ask myself is, the prospect that I'm trying to convert, what are the things that they're thinking that they won't say out loud? In that answer lies my best hooks for my ads, for my copy, for everything. So you have to sit down and think, right, for your prospect, what could they be thinking? What would be an objection? What would be something that they wouldn't say out loud? And just say it.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Evergreen Marketing Podcast by Carrot.com, where we help you build a business of freedom and impact. I'm your host, Brady Winder, and today I've got a friend I'm about to introduce you to who has sold over $100 million worth of digital products online, which is important for you guys as mostly real estate investors because this dude knows the psychology of sales. He knows negotiation. He knows how to write copy that converts, and we're going to dig into that. And then on the back end of the podcast, we're also going to talk about his crazy intense battle with the FTC that went on for over 12 or 18 months, which is super important, relevant as more regulation is creeping in and more investors are asking questions about like, am I compliant? Am I going to get in trouble? What are the risks? So we're going to talk about both those things, but I'm really excited to nerd out on some sales psychology and some marketing so we can help you all be better marketers. So anyways, Anik, welcome to the podcast, man. Anik,
Yeah,
welcome
no
to the
problem.
podcast.
Thanks, Brady, for having me. And Brady, something I completely didn't even mention that you may not know about me is that I've also lost millions of dollars in real estate investments. So yay, I've got that, and that's
Really?
all been the last few
Nice.
years as well. Yeah. So while I was battling the issue with the FTC, we were also getting it pretty bad on the real estate side. Made some what now I can say is a stupid decisions and investments. I'm happy to talk openly about that too, because big lessons learned from that. But yeah, my wife and I, we do real estate investing. And it's not just losses.
Nice.
We've had some wins as well, but the losses are pretty bad. And so we took some
Yeah.
pretty big hits over the last couple of years.
What type of investing are you doing right now?
So right at the moment, nothing. So at the moment, we're just trying to clean up the mess we created, and we're trying to
Yeah.
just recoup from the FTC stuff, having lost a lot of our liquidity after settling with them. But prior to that, we had originally started. We owned some local houses that we had just given up for rent, and then we went to a Brad Sumrock event, and my wife. So again, like, this is something everyone here can relate to. So my first book I ever read was Rich Dad Poor Dad. I skipped. This is how big of a nerd I was in high school. I skipped high school because I found it boring. Went to Barnes and Nobles, or Borders. Back then there was Borders,
Yeah.
and I had had a fight with my dad the night before because I was trying to convince my dad. Can you imagine, as a high schooler, like ninth or 10th grader, I was trying to convince my dad to buy a gas station, a local gas station slash mechanic shop. And he was almost about to with his friend, and then last minute he backed out. And that night I was upset. So the next day I'm like looking for a book at Borders, and I see Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so, like, just being mad at my dad at that moment, I'm like, yeah. And I started reading the book.
Yeah.
First book I ever bought, first book I ever read, changed my life. And it's so awesome to be able to say that I eventually went on to partner with Robert Kiyosaki and have generated tens of millions with him. But my wife also ended up that was one of the first investment books she ever read, and it changed her life. So she read it much, much later after we got married. And so she got really into real estate investing. So she wanted to learn more. So we went to Brad Sumrock event, learned about multifamily, did a bunch of LP deals that turned out really well for us. We didn't end up we didn't want to lead anything like that. It didn't seem too complicated, too much work. I
Yeah.
already have multiple businesses that I run. So I was like, I don't. But after that, as COVID happened, my income went through the roof. And so we were looking for ways to obviously tax optimize and real estate investor status or real estate professional status for my wife. And so we found the world of triple net. And I was like, dude, this is it. This is me. Like, triple net, this just makes sense. Like, I love this. Like, I could see myself building an entire multi-billion dollar eventually one day portfolio. And gosh, I don't even want to talk about this. It's so embarrassing. This is my first time talking publicly about this crap. Don't judge me, guys. Made stupid mistakes. I'm a entrepreneur at heart. and the same types of risks that I take in the daily basis with my companies pays off, but you can't think like that with real estate. So, we ended up getting into some C stores, some because
Mhm.
there was some ridiculous tax incentives for it. And we did our homework. The company that was guaranteeing those leases was a very, very, very well-reputed company, family offices, hedge funds, they're all in it. And, they've been around forever, and it was a really good deal, and the goal was to buy it, have it for 3, 4, 5 years, and then sell it. Well, the company used to be a very good company, and after we did our deals, management changed, and the new management came in super aggressive, made a bunch of moves. Let's just say
Mm.
once the interest rates started going up last year, the company went bankrupt and left
Oof.
us with a bunch of defunct piece of crap properties. Um, and I say piece of crap. They're good properties. They're functional running. Sorry, I don't mean piece of crap that way. I just meant like they're not something I
Yeah.
want. It's not my business. It's not something I want to run. It's not something I understand or know. And we had bought it
Yeah.
for the note, honestly, and
Uh-huh.
didn't even really physically go check the properties. I don't know what got into us. We were making crazy deals and didn't even go see them. Like spend so much money.
Yeah.
And it's just been hell ever since then. So that was last year. So I was dealing with that while I was dealing with the FTC stuff. It was just so crazy. Until now, we haven't really resolved that issue because those properties were way overvalued. And so now we'll have to figure out a way to get out of them and, lose a ton. And lots of lessons learned about real estate investing. I'm not done with it.
Yeah,
I
you live
loved
and
it.
learn, yeah.
Oh my God. I feel like every major successful investor I've ever spoken to has a version of this story in their past when everything then changed. And I was just telling my wife, I'm like, "Hey, look, got that out of the way. Now we can go off and do great things."
Yeah, you're taking on risk, man. You're taking on
Yeah,
risk. That's just part of the journey. That's
it
part of
just
what
is.
comes
Yep,
with it.
yep.
So some interesting lessons on the real estate side. Let's talk about your journey as a marketer. Walk me through some of the highlights. You mentioned you've gotten to partner with Robert Kiyosaki. You got to partner with Damon
Damon
from
John.
Shark Tank,
Mhm.
Damon John from Shark Tank. Walk me through some of the highlights and kind of what led you to where you are now.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy. So, I'm not supposed to be where I am at all. Like it was, or maybe I am. I don't know. But so growing up, I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad's
Hmm.
a very, very, very smart nuclear mechanical engineer. The guy was at
Oh,
the
interesting.
Nuclear Regulatory Commission handling the safety of 2 power plants from the government's perspective. Grew up, ironically, in a village with no electricity. He used to study under candles and the street lamps. They had street lights, a few of them, and he would go sit underneath and study. So now, when he retired, he was managing the electricity of like 10 million homes. It was like kind of ironic, but growing up, I looked around. I was very ambitious. Since I was a kid, I was like, I want to do something, be something. I want to achieve something. So I looked around my community. I'm Indian by descent, and um, everyone in our community that had the biggest houses, nicest cars, and the most respect, where it's a doctor, right? So ergo, I'm gonna be a doctor. So I worked hard in high school. I got into one of the top programs in the world. Only 60 kids get in, and people from all over the world apply. It was very hard. I got into it. I was on a full scholarship. I was on a one-way ticket into any med school I want. So I was a pre-med, but I was already being recruited freshman year by Harvard, Stanford, and everyone to eventually go to their med school. So I'm like, I'm set. I'm made. I'm full ride, everything. Well, just weeks into that, I wake up one morning and I'm like, what have I done? I'm absolutely miserable. I don't want to do this rest of my life. So I start thinking back. I'm that kid in the neighborhood that had the lemonade stand. But I'm that kid in the neighborhood that
Mm.
had the lemonade stand where I hired younger kids to run it while I was inside watching cartoons.
Yeah.
Like I was always showing signs of this. I just
Yeah.
no one was there in my family to know what it was or pick up on it. So early on, I'm like, man, I want to do my own thing. Like I want to do a business. So I ended up, thank God for my parents and their support and everyone. About 2 years into college, I abandoned that whole track, the made set track, and switched over to a business school where now my dad has to pay 30 grand a year for me to go to school. Like I lost a scholarship, but and then within a week or two of business school, I'm like, I hate this too. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be the loser in my parents' basement. Like, what's wrong with me? Right. And
Yeah.
in the end, you know what it was, man? I just was tired of sitting around learning. I was like, put me in, coach. Like, I want to go do. I'm ready. Like, and so I turned to Google. Google was new back then, so this ages me. Google was just out, and I typed in how to make money.
Yeah.
And Google
Yeah.
auto-filled for me online, and I thought, "Sure." Right? I have no money, I'm like, "Whatever." I saw all the stuffing scams, stuff envelope scams, this, that, and find my way to a site that talked about selling information. And that to me, being a college kid who would spend thousands of dollars on textbooks and all, and then knowing the value of education, I was like, "Huh, what's this about?" They were selling PDFs back then. You'd sell a ebook for 47 bucks or whatever, and on ClickBank, right? And
Yep.
so that's
Yep.
where I got my start. Junior year of college, I started, well, sophomore year of college, I started studying it. Junior year, I started doing it. Man, 18 months, literally a year and a half. I tried. I was obsessive. I did not go to any frat parties my entire college life. The first college football game I ever went to, ironically, was after I graduated. I went to homecoming. I'd never been to a game, and while the whole time I was there, I would just go to class, and I had a part-time job because I needed to make that money so I could blow it on my online ventures and hide it from my parents so I didn't have to borrow money. And then at night, I'd stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning trying to figure out this online marketing stuff. 18 months, man. Finally, I was about to quit, but it worked out. I made some money. By the time I graduated a year later, I didn't go take a job. I had great job offers from Wall Street. I didn't take any of them. It was my business was on track to doing 1,000,000 a year. And so, ironically, I did end up in my parents' basement, but I set up an
Yeah.
office in their basement. So it wasn't because I was a loser, it was because we were killing it. And so I just fell in love with the idea of selling information online. It just made sense to me, and I grew that. And then in 2010, almost went bankrupt with the whole market collapsing and our industry collapsing. And I had grown the business to a multi-country venture. I had 2 offices in India. I was on the road all the time. I was speaking on stages for Tony Robbins and others, and I was living the life, man. I've done so much. I'm 41, and I tell people I've lived 3 lifetimes, and I'm very happy and excited about where I've been. But then I've also been through the downs, multiple downs, right? Shoot up, down, and there's something really ironic about the down moments, and I wanna tell this part of the story to those who might be, because there's gonna be a good portion of your listeners who might be struggling right now. It's something I've seen, and to those of you who might not be struggling, look, you're going to at some point. It's just life. Life comes in ebbs and flows, and so listen up to this because I tracked this in my life. The first time I had my issue coming in around 2000 and 10, like I said, right? My business was doing about $3 to $4 million a year. Okay. And we almost went bankrupt. And when I came back out of that, it about another year and a half, we came out of it. My business shot up to about between 8 to $10 million.
Hmm.
And then in 2018 and 19, mostly 2019, in 2019, we got 9 days away from having to shut down our company. Got close again. We were really struggling. And so that was my second time that we almost kind of went bankrupt or whatever. We came out of that real quick, actually. We were able to figure something out, dial something in. 3 months later, we were out of it, and we shot up to a $40 million a year company. And now in May of 2022, I got the FTC notice, and that really hurt our ability. So we kind of bottomed out again. And all I do now when these bad times happen is I say, "Damn, I'm excited about the next one," because every time I've done this before, I've tripled or quadrupled from where I was before. So it's like if you're going through that hard time, and that's been the track of my life. It's literally been what's happened. And I know, it sucks and it's given me white hair, and I don't wish it upon anybody, but also I'm now building an opportunity and in an opportunity that's I would have never found without the bad, right? The bad things are what lead to the good things. And so, man, I led from one thing to another, but I think my core skills that got me where I am today, copywriting, funnel building, paid traffic, it's all conversion, psychology, sales, which is funny
Yeah.
coming from me because I was the biggest introvert even right now. I mean,
Interesting. Yeah.
the minute this podcast ends, man, I'm gonna go stare at a wall for 10 minutes. I have to.
Yeah.
I show up well on video. I love being on stage, but it drains me much faster than an extrovert. I'm a total introvert. I was shy as hell. I couldn't stand up in front of my own friends and talk. But in time that I grew out of that. And next thing you know, the thing that I'm actually really, really good at, even though my degree's in finance, I would never, never do not let me manage your books or any shit. I can't do anything in finance. But marketing, that's my thing. I understand sales psychology. I've studied it for 20 plus years and I love it. So copywriting is my thing.
Hmm. So I'm kind of interested. what are some of the most important questions you ask yourself when you're trying to write like copy for a sales funnel? So like college, you were skipping frat parties to learn how to build sales funnels. What's kind of the
Mhm.
mindset you had to put yourself into write really good sales copy?
Okay. That's a great question. I've never been asked this question. So,
Hmm.
I I will give this to people in a way that they just cannot forget because I'm going to use two words that create more emotional triggers inside of people than any other two words on this planet right now, and those two words are Donald Trump. So, the
Yep.
so the greatest copywriting lesson you're going to get is from Donald Trump. All right, hear me out. For good or bad, use it however you want. It doesn't matter if you like him or not. It's irrelevant. So, how did he become the president in 2016? As one of the most unlikely candidates to ever have done it. And the truth is very simple. Okay. He said the things out loud that many were thinking but would never say out loud.
Hmm.
Right
Yep.
or wrong, doesn't matter. You don't have to
Yep.
agree with it. There's a huge portion of the population thinking certain things that they wouldn't dare say out loud. And then this man shows up and says them and doesn't just say them, adamantly says them, stands behind them, shouts them from the top of a mountain. And that's why they said, right, the silent support. He had massive amount of people supporting him. They wouldn't publicly say it, but behind the scenes, because he says the things that they're thinking, but they wouldn't say out loud. So the first question I ask myself is the prospect that I'm trying to convert, what are the things that they're thinking that they won't say out loud? In that answer lies my best hooks for my ads, for my copy, for everything. So you have to sit down and think, right, for your prospect, what could they be thinking? What would be an objection? What would be something that they wouldn't say out loud? And just say it. And so for me, by the way, when I write copy, I don't believe in fancy words. As a matter of fact, my mentor, who was the brother of Michael Masterson, Mark Ford, who was arguably the best copywriter to have ever lived, his younger brother taught me in the early days, and I'll never forget a lesson he gave me. I remember I was visiting him. I was at a hotel in Baltimore. He had his laptop. It was so impactful. I still remember the scene from where we were standing. And he looked at me and he said, Anik, the best copywriters use the least adjectives and the least pronouns.
Hmm. Yeah.
They
Interesting.
just and he said, if nothing else, adjectives. Eliminate adjectives. And if you think about it, right, you see, well, a lot of times we think about copy, we think about that sleazy sounding like imagine the landscape of the blah blah blah, and then
Yeah.
sizzling hot piping da, da, da. And that's the used car salesperson. That's the person when you walk into the dealership and they're like, "Hey, you looking good." You're like, "Oh, dude, just get away from me. Like, I don't want you to come near me." Right?
Yeah.
Whereas today with advertising, we are getting so targeted. Like I am running I was setting up ads, you know, earlier, and I said, "Hey, Facebook, I want you to show this ad to someone who's watched at least 10 seconds of my ads about this book and you know, hasn't moved forward yet or whatever." So like I just like know who that person is. I no longer need to sound like that. I literally my ad starts with, "Hey, I saw that you looked at my book and didn't buy yet. Let me tell you 5 reasons I think you should."
Mm.
Great copy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Plain, simple. Yeah.
Plain, simple. Copy, what I tell everybody, is about psychology. It's not about the fancy words. People make it about something completely different. And when it comes to psychology, you don't even have to have a PhD in psychology. You just need to ask yourself, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
And the pattern interrupt that you can do for people that is so unique is whatever they're thinking, just say it.
Yeah.
Don't hide behind it. Don't try to, you know, like kind of just lap around it. Just say it. Like, hey, I bet you're probably thinking you'll never get sued by the FTC. Probably thinking that you're too small and that they only go after big companies, right? Well, let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom.
Instead of the alternative, like, have you ever wondered, yeah,
Yeah.
you're probably thinking it's just super simple, cut and dry.
It's just
You
direct.
know,
It's just
it's
direct.
funny. I was kind of going down a keyword research rabbit hole the other day around like how to sell my house fast and doing a little bit of research on what the what most people think about wholesalers or the quote unquote we buy houses companies. Like how do most people normally talk about wholesalers, real estate investors, and perceive them? And one of the things I found was a Reddit thread of like somebody just asking, like, hey, somebody tell me about these we buy houses companies. Like, are they legit? What's the deal with these companies? The Reddit thread was one of the top search results. And that's where you're going to find a lot of great great copy, like how people what people are actually saying, that's where people are going to be a little bit more unfiltered, less filtered. I'd say that's like second best to hopping on the phone with them, hopping on the phone with the prospect. But anyways, what I was getting at is the question they're asking is, are they going to lowball me? So for an example of a real estate investor, that might be something to consider putting on your website. Like, isn't a cash home buyer just going to lowball me? Explain that, walk them through that, because that's the thing that they're thinking, but they're not gonna have the guts to ask that to you to your face most of the time,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Are you going to take
So,
advantage of me? If you go one level deeper, so if we're going to talk psychology, we go one level deeper, what's really irking someone? They don't wanna get taken advantage of. They don't want to be made a
mm,
fool of,
yeah,
right? They don't want to get taken for a ride. They don't want to get the worst deal. And so, speaking in real estate terminology, I watched I think it was a video once, it was a long time ago, where I saw a person make an offer. I saw a wholesaler make an offer to someone that was far below the asking price of that person. And the person's initial reaction was like, "What the heck? That's so much. That's like 50 grand below what I'm asking." And the guy
mhm,
said, "Well, actually, it's about $10,000 above what you're asking." And the person's
mhm,
like, "The hell? It doesn't make any sense. Do you mind if I explain to you how I think that?" They're like, "Sure." And what he goes on to do is he says, "Well, I came to your property and I noticed these things. Do you agree that it needs a new this, a new that, 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 and back tax, and blah, 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 whatever, right?" And the person's like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." He goes, "Have you actually sat down and done the math as to the cost of all of that? And what's gonna happen is a buyer is gonna either ask you to fix all of that before they buy, or they're gonna ask you to give a credit so that they can get it fixed. Do you agree? Yes. Have you done the math? No. Well, let's do the math. Do you mind if we do the math
yeah,
together? So let's do it." And lo and behold, does the math with the person and says, "You're welcome. I'll send you this. You're welcome to check my numbers. I'll give you even phone numbers to a few places you can call. And look, I'm not going to have to spend that because I have wholesale deals with people. So I'll make my margin on the fact that I'm not going to have to spend the 50 or 60 that you would have to spend. So right now, I'm giving you the opportunity to just ignore all of that crap. I'm not going to do an inspection, a check, nothing. You get to take your stuff, pack up, and just leave and never have to worry about it. Or you can go the other route. The difference for you is just going to be a mere few thousands. All I could do is to tell you, I was listening to this person and I'm like, dude, I'm ready to sell you my house and I'm not even in this conversation. Right.
yeah,
But it was because, and the other person, by the way, ended up moving forward with the deal, at least on the phone. I don't know if it closed, but because the other person basically felt comforted knowing, "Oh, I see how you got to the price. I don't feel taken advantage of." Now, also, don't hide the fact that you're gonna make money on it. He didn't. He
mm,
said, "Why would I be willing to buy it still? Because I'm gonna get half off on all of this. You won't. I do a volume of work. And so I'm gonna take that discount and I'm gonna make a little sliver." But a normal buyer that's not like me is not gonna have that value add. So you are actually saving money because of my value add.
mm,
And I mean, I don't know if the numbers were true or not. I have no idea, but
yeah.
the argument was solid. It was
It's a
like
solid case, yeah.
the other person sitting there thinking, "I'm not getting taken advantage of. He's still making money, so I know he's not bullshit. And hey, if he's going to deal with this, then he should make money, and I can get out of this now. I don't have to even think about it anymore. Like, shoot, I'm in. Let's go." And but at the same time, had the person not gone through that last step of the conversation, there's no chance they would have sold that they would have got the deal. And I remember hearing that thinking, now that's what I mean by sales psychology. Not what's being taught out there, but it's like just know what the person's thinking and address it head on in a way that they feel like it was heard and catered to. And you see how much it moves the sale up. It's crazy to see how quickly it moves the sale.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So what you're saying is basically, what are they thinking? So those are the questions and objections.
Yeah.
And so when you're selling, like your background is in selling digital products, and so I feel like, my experience, it's harder because you have to make the sale without um getting to meet with that person face to face, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you is outside of the questions and objections, if we're thinking of most of our audience is real estate investors with websites, they're working on their websites, they're thinking, what can I do to make my website convert better, to make my leads more motivated, to want to work with me? So by the time they call me or fill out the form, they're like, they're sold on me.
Sure,
What are some of the other things, like the most important critical things, in addition to tackling those question and objections on a
sure.
website?
Okay. So let's talk about, I think, another core word that leads to transactions more so than any other space. I think in the real estate space, this is very relevant. And that word is trust.
Hmm. Yep.
So people make buying decisions, especially today more than ever before, based off of how much they trust you and your brand. It's a big part of a buying decision. Actually, there was a study done that proved that especially the younger generations will spend more money willingly, knowingly on a brand they trust and believe in the values of than one that they don't. Even if they know and have full confidence that that product will work the exact same as this product, just as good of a quality, they will choose to go to the place where they have trust. So how does that back end into what I'm talking about? Well, there's really only major two ways I've always said that you can get trust, that you can gain trust, and that is through time or intimacy. And I don't mean intimacy in a
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Intimacy as in if I spend 2 hours with you in person, that's about the equivalent of you following me online for 2 months or 3 months. Like, because we're just one-on-one, we're together, like, it's just a deeper connection, right? So, you can do it through either the depth of the time you spend together or the volume of time you spend together, like
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard the same thing for friendships, just in a different light. Like friendships are like your best friendships and relationships are built through time and or depth, going through hard things together. But
yeah,
anyways, yeah,
exactly.
interesting.
100%. So in this situation, most real estate investors, they don't think about it this way, but I do. So when I'm in business and I'm trying to close a deal, one of the talents I've had that I think I've been the best at, I'm very good at selling on webinars. I suck at selling on the phone. I can't close anyone. I suck. I don't know what it is. My team doesn't even let me get on the phone because I don't do the whole sales thing, but you know what I'm better at than absolutely anybody that I've met, and then is biz dev. I
Hmm.
am, Robert Kiyosaki, that deal, Daymond John. People always ask me that, how do you get these big names to write forwards to your books and partner with them? I'm like, I'm just good at these relationships. But Robert Kiyosaki took me about a year before we were in the full maturity of our relationship. Daymond John took me 3. I always joke with him. I'm like, man, you really, just put us through the ringer, 3 years. But, I mean,
Yeah.
imagine the ability for me to now have Daymond on my cell phone. I can call him right now, he'd pick up, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
3 years of my life invested for a connection like that is worth it. So, how does this relate back to an investor? Well, I'll give a little story, and then I'll connect it directly back to the investor. So, there is we have I think it's called the Verizon Center. They changed it. Capital One Arena now, maybe. It's in Washington, DC. It's where our basketball team and our hockey team plays, concerts and everything. There's a guy there. His name is Vladimir, okay? And, he has been prospecting me for 6 years. The dude is relentless to buy a suite, something, and, just they sell you all their events. I get an email from him every couple of weeks. Gosh, at this point, I get worried if I don't get an email. Check in. "Are you doing alright? Where's my pitch?" Right? Every few weeks, I
Yeah.
get an email from him saying, "Hey, these are the events coming up. Would you like to do something? Da, 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 follow up." I've never done anything with him except for last year. I'm on a plane, and I wanna do something fun for my team. I wanna do something fun for the holiday party. I don't wanna just have another dinner and blah, blah, blah. I was like, we've been through the ringer with this FTC thing. I wanna take them out. I wanna have a good time. I wanna do something fun. So, I'm on the plane's about to take off, and I'm like, "God, what can I do that's unique?" And I'm gonna turn my phone off, but the plane's already, like, on the runway, and I'm like, "Alright, I'm gonna turn it off in a second." And as I'm going to turn the airplane mode on, I get a ding. It's Vladimir, and he's got an offer, and I go, "Perfect. Let me
Yeah.
rent a box suite and take my team out to go see a Caps game."
Yeah.
And like that, he got, I think, 7, 8 grand out of me. And I've told him this story before where I've said, "Dude, I use your example all the time." And he's right back to it, by the way. Every 2 weeks, I still get those updates.
Yeah.
And so my thing is it's all about timing, but I don't know shit about Vladimir, by the way. I've never met the guy. I've talked to him a little bit, told him the story. We've had a few conversations. I don't know if he's married. I don't know. But I feel like I feel like I know the guy. If I have to buy ticket sales or something, I trust him. Why? Just because he's been around for a long time and I've gotten his emails and followed. So for a lot of investors, what I say is like someone may not be willing to buy their or sell their house today, but you don't know what happens in 3 months, 6 months, nine
Mhm.
months, 12 months. Are you around? Do you show up? Do you send them things? So just keep delivering value, build up that trust. It's not very expensive to, you know, send them a little thing during some holiday or something like send out little packages. I do this all the time with my contacts and my affiliates just to build that relationship up. So trust is probably the biggest thing you can do. So on your website, do you have a newsletter? Do you have the way for someone to opt in? Do you do anything like I have the last guy who helped me buy my house. I can't stand the guy. I would never ever 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 hire him again. But every few months I get a house report from him as
Mhm.
to the value of my house. I know he's automated it going from the back end. And I always open it. Always, because I wanna know what my house is worth, right?
Yeah.
Not that I would ever use him to sell it, but, um, it's just interesting to see these opportunities. I Most investors and most realtors I know, the last realtor, I'll tell you what, we bought 3 investment properties with. That was, during I think it was, like, during COVID time. I've never heard back from him. Never once.
Interesting. Yeah.
Never once. I bought 3 properties with the guy. Never
And he's
once
not
has he
top of mind. Yeah.
Yeah, never once has he called, texted, emailed, sent us anything. I don't remember his name. I genuinely my wife might. I don't remember his name. If I was looking for another realtor today, I don't know if I'd go to I have nothing against him. He was a good realtor, but I'm a little
Yeah.
confused. How do you not give a shit about a person who bought 3 properties with you,
Yeah.
right? So what's your follow-up game look like? Are you staying in front of people, whether it's just
Mhm.
and by the way, it's not always this is not proper follow-up in the trust world. "Hey, are you ready to sell your house yet? Hey, are you ready to sell your house yet?" No. It's, "Hey, just letting you know, so and so in this neighborhood sold a house for da da da. Hope you're doing well. Let us know if you ever think of us." It's like service oriented, right? That's what's
Yeah.
building the trust.
Mhm.
Here's what happens when the trust is high enough. Okay. I'll give you another simple example because, again, I said I keep it to simple psychology. If my best friend calls me right now, okay, as a matter of fact, this happened the other day. He called me and he needs a bunch of stuff from my garage. He's excited about his 3D printer. He needs some of the plastic modeling crap I have, and I haven't been using it for years. And he's literally says something. I bought a new 3D printer. Can I borrow your he names a few things. Can I come over and take it? I said, sure. Literally, no I don't know. I found out later. I'm like, what do you like, what is it? And he told me what he's doing. But I didn't care. Didn't matter. His pitch to me was my best friend. We have massive trust. He has the code to my garage. Just come in and take it and leave. Right?
Yeah.
Same time, imagine someone on the street comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I take your plastic modeling stuff? Could I take that air compressor and those spray cans and all that?" And be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Who are you? What are you? Why do you need it? Why are you coming to mass? When do you want? Like,
Yeah.
when are you going to give it back? This costs me
Mhm.
money." All these topics come up. So the warmer the connection gets, the better the trust and relationship. The less it matters what your website says. The less it matters what your business card says. Nobody gives a crap what your company's name is. That's not what sells eventually. They
Mhm.
literally only care about the fact that they trust you. So when you call and say, "I've got a deal," or "I've got something," they say, "Sure, I'm in."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of people no one would say that that's part of copywriting, and I say it is for me. Why do I do so many podcasts? Right now we're doing almost a podcast every day or every other day. And people say, "Don't you get tired?" I do. I mean, I've booked things up where I'm doing presentations in front of a group of 100 virtual people. And I'm like, "I don't care. It's consistency in showing up." And every time I do that, my network's flying, getting out a little wider, wider, wider. It's PR.
Yeah.
I said, what
Mhm.
happens is that person might see me for 5 minutes on this podcast and then sees an ad from me 2 weeks from now. But I'm not a new face. I'm a face that
Yeah.
they saw. So they're more likely to buy whatever I'm selling just because they've seen me before.
Yeah. I love that, man. Yeah. I would double down on that. Like just staying in front of people over time. You have to have follow-up. And it has to be good follow-up. I love how you said that. It's not, "Hey, are you ready to sell your house yet?" It's like, "Hey, just thinking of you, seeing if there's any way we can help," or, "Hey, we just sold a house in this area. Just want to let you know we're still in business. Just checking in." It's the simple, casual, human touch points like that. I love that, man. Um, yeah, I love those tips on copy. Man, I could nerd out on this stuff all day with you. I would love that. But let's switch over to, just for the sake of time, let's switch over to your FTC journey. Kind of walk me through what the heck happened there, man.
Yeah. Listen, man. So 20 years I've been teaching people how to build a business online. So I always knew that we're in a heavily regulated space by the FTC. It's not a space that they like. And so
Yeah.
I had an attorney for the last 12 of it. That was a compliance attorney, and I use air quotes. Um, and I would get stuff checked. I had a full-time paralegal working in my company as we got, kind of once we got past 20 million, I'm like, okay, we got to really put on our big boy pants here and manage things properly. So my sales team hated me. I wouldn't let them say half the crap. I wouldn't let them finance deals. I wouldn't let them, let people do multi credit cards and, take loans against their house. I said, nope. So really, it was only about 15 or maybe 20% of our revenue came from our phone sales team doing high ticket sales because I
Oh,
just didn't like
interesting.
that business.
Yeah.
And so I took compliance very seriously. But what I was told by many attorneys was very simple: look, be good, do good, you're good. So don't get complaints. The FTC works off complaints. If they get a volume of complaints, they come looking. And I said, makes sense. They're
Hmm.
there to protect the consumers. And if there's a volume of consumers getting hurt, they should come looking. I get it. I said, well, I'm
Hmm.
not here to hurt consumers, so I'm all good. So what did I do? I built the most badass customer support team on the planet. I had 3 customer support teams in 3 geographical locations running 24/7. Nights, weekends, didn't matter to me. They had to be running. 36-minute average response time on 20,000 transactions a year. So you can imagine how many customers we were processing per year. And we had a great support team. We had a refund rate of less than 5%. We had a chargeback rate of less than 0.7%. Both of those numbers are less than half the industry average for our industry. Um, and I've probably done about 200,000 customers, unique customers in my career. Not once have I ever received an FTC notice, legal notice, state AG notice, or even any of my customers have I ever received a legal thing. I've never been sued. I've never been in a legal case with a vendor, an employee, a contractor, nobody. Crystal clean. We've done good by everybody. And so I just wasn't at that point in my life ever thinking that I'm the target because we did what we were told to do, which is keep everything clean, make sure
Hmm.
there's no complaints. BBB rating was an A. We used to get 20 complaints a year on 20,000 transactions, and they were all
Yeah.
100% resolved. So
Wow.
I
Yeah.
don't really see it. I could literally throw a ball and in any direction around me and hit a person that's doing it far worse. That probably should be a better target. No idea. But May 20th of 2022, we got that notice. And what's happened over the last few years at the FTC, this is just conjecture, it's just my opinion. I'm not a lawyer and I have no idea and I can't back this up. But what I think and what I see is that the new way of enforcing the regulations at the FTC is that, well, actually they told us this. So this part they told my lawyer because I was like, what is this? Like, where are the complaints? Like, I don't understand why you guys are coming for me. I don't have any complaints. And they literally said complaints are irrelevant. I'm like, what?
What?
Not what I was
Yeah.
told for 20 years. Like, wait, hold on, time out.
Yeah.
Yellow flag. Like, dude, what? And they're like, no, the rules are the rules. And so that's like, in the end, I was like, okay, I mean, that's like you driving down the street, you're going 100 in a 60 zone, you get pulled over. And you're like, what? There's nobody else out here. It's 2 in the morning. I'm not going to hurt anyone. There's no one on the road. The cop's like, 60 is 60. That's the speed limit. Going 100, pulling you over.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they've become a lot more about the actual specific rules, and so
Mm.
it was bad, man. I mean, it was just, what happened with me is they didn't force me to shut down my company or anything. They started an investigation, said turn over everything. The worst thing about being sued by the FTC is you have to spend your money to prosecute yourself. So I have to dig up all this material. Eventually I ended up turning over 600,000 pieces of material, sales calls, letters, emails, conversations, Slack calls, like Slack communications, webinars,
Sheesh.
like everything, dude,
Yeah.
everything, 32 pages of requests, right? And each request was like something that was like thousands of pages for us to like turn it over. Cost me a couple $1 million in just employee costs to turn it over. Every day I was,
And the time suck and the headache, man.
dude, I mean, I had to. So I ran a publishing company, right? So even though they didn't tell me I have to stop doing what I'm doing, and it's a confidential process, I don't have to tell anybody, but I'm not going to do that. That's not why I survived 20 years, man. I do things right. And so within a couple of days of receiving the notice and getting my ducks in a row, I knew I was going to have a conversation with each of the experts we published. And before I could speak to them, I knew what they were going to ask. And so I shut down their funnels. I shut down all that. So basically, one morning,
Mm.
Monday morning, I got the notice on Friday evening. Monday morning, I shut down a 40 million a year company. Literally just, you could
Sheesh.
just see it power down. Had to call the PE firm that was getting ready to buy us, and I knew that deal was gone. I was about to step down as CEO. That was gone. My whole life, man, everything just completely flipped upside down. And then I would have panic attacks, and
I was
some
literally
mornings.
just about to say, did you have panic attacks? Like, when did
Yeah,
this sink
yeah.
in? Like, yeah,
My daughter being born was. I was wondering. I get pretty spiritual about it. I'm like, God definitely put strength in my life for me to be able to handle that moment. Because I'd be able to go back home to her and just kind of forget about everything for that time. And they gave me, no, my wife is amazing. I mean, she was super strong through this whole thing with me. And I'm blessed. Like, listen, during the whole time, my wife and my family and I, we still live in the same house, drive the same cars, live the same life. We still are okay. We're good. God has blessed me. But to lose everything like that you've worked so hard for, and then to know that they're going to issue this nasty press release about you, and that everyone's gonna see it, and they're gonna basically strip you naked and drag you around the town,
yeah.
eh, had to prepare for that. That was a lot, and, thankfully, the industry as a whole didn't care, man, because my
Mm.
20 years of records of everyone
Yeah.
having dealt with me directly stood and was way better. So, but during that investigation, I would talk to then I switched attorneys over to Greg Christiansen, my co-author on this book, and I started learning so many things, and I was like, "Wait, what? I didn't know that. I didn't know this. How do I if I don't know this, being a 20-year OG in this industry that people look up to learn, if I don't know it, how the hell is anyone else gonna know it?" So
Yeah.
that's where I was like halfway through the investigation, I'm like, "Man, this is brutal. I gotta
Mhm.
write a book about this so that people actually understand the rules." Because when you actually read, like, I dare anyone to try to go read the Federal Trade Commission Act. That's how they got their name, by the way. There's an actual congressional act passed decades ago called the Federal Trade Commission Act, and Section 5 of it is what regulates the marketing laws. But the FTC, a lot of people don't know this, they regulate a lot of things. They regulate acquisitions, they're basically there to create fair trade. So they regulate privacy policies and just like everything. Section 5, it's just one of the things they regulate is marketing. And if you read Section 5, man, I mean, most of it doesn't make any damn sense. It's written by attorneys for attorneys. Well, not anymore. We wrote this book. Well, me
Mm.
partnered with the attorney. It's written mostly by me, a copywriter, so it's a fun read, it's a quick read, it's story driven, it's
Yeah.
example driven. So if you are out there marketing, which whether you're selling real estate, buying real estate, I mean, if you have a website and you're on sales calls, you are possibly making mistakes in the worlds of claims and unsubstantiated statements. And this is all stuff that we cover in here. And look, the digital version of the book is $7. So we don't make a lot of money as of now. The lawyer and myself are both involved in really the mission. We've both burned collectively well over $1 million building this brand and this message out. Thankfully for us, it's being super well received. So, it's been a fun place to be able to turn my mess into my message and my pain into the gain of others.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was brutal. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story that
Mm.
I think you'll laugh. So one morning, this shows you where my mental state is. So
Yeah.
morning, I drive into my office and I see a Crown Victoria parked in the parking lot directly across the entrance of our office. And it's one of those
Yeah.
like weird colored 1990s Miami Vice type of like, you know, and it's got that thing on the mirror, the side. It's got that swivel thingy, the
The
light
little
that they
little
have.
spotlight. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm staring at. There's someone sitting in it. I walk into my office and I'm like, "That's it. This is the day. They're taking me in. It's happening. That's the FBI. That's somebody staking out. They're waiting for the rest of the crew." I'm on the phone with my lawyer. My lawyer is like, "Calm down. It's not what? No, it's not. This your case is different. It's already been going on 6 months. That like we've been turning over everything. They're not going to raid your office." I'm like, "No, it's happening. I've read about this. It's going to happen. Oh my god." Okay, I'm like having kind of like a pseudo panic attack. I'm like looking through the windows and the car is still there. Call my wife. I'm like, "Hey, this might happen. I might if I disappear. Like, make sure you call the lawyer. Let him know. Like." And she's panicking. She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know, but there's like this car, like I think it's the cops." And so my lawyer's like trying to call me back. He's like, "Just take a breath, man. It's not whatever." So I get the idea. Like I go to my front desk lady who's been there longer. And I'm like, "Who's that car? Like, what is that car?" She's like, "Yeah, I don't know. It's been here since the morning, and there's just someone sitting in it for a long time." And I'm like, "That doesn't help." So anyways, here's a kicker. 10 minutes later, she comes into my office and she's like, "Anik, it's," I forgot his name. His name starts with, like, Robert or something. That was the building custodian. It was the building
Oh,
manager
my
who,
Lanta.
and I was like, "What?" And she goes, "He just went to an auction last week and bought that car for 5 grand, and he was sitting in the car because he was just having his, like, he was just having a meal and doing some calls because he had to do maintenance work in this building, so he was waiting."
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, I laughed. I called my lawyer, and my lawyer was like, "You need to get a grip, dude." And I'm like, "I'm fine. I just, and so, but I always tell this story because I think it highlights to people that your mind, that's what happens to your mind, right? I had a person that I know of. I don't know him well, but he called me last week, and he's getting it way worse than I am. He woke up and all his assets are gone, every penny frozen, every single dollar, security, investment, real estate, all frozen. And as of now, the judge has given him the ability to have $10,000 a month out of his own pocket, out of his own money to live for his family. That's it.
Sheesh.
The rest of
Yeah.
it is frozen until the case is done, and he's probably gonna lose it all. So in my case, at least, we didn't have any asset freezes or anything like that. But man, it's tough out there, and I just tell people, if you're a business owner of any type, you need to get serious because the regulators are getting more serious and they're regulating more aggressively. And it's just, it doesn't take much time to get empowered and knowledgeable on the subject. Do it, and just play within the dots. It's not
Yeah.
worth it outside the dots. It just isn't. It just isn't worth it. Not even the millions I made, and I can say it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. So, oh man, I love that story. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the last things I want to ask you about before we wrap up is where do you see the future of compliance around, like, a lot of our investors are either doing, well, some of them are doing like cold text blasting or cold calling still, and regulation is just getting harder and harder and
Harder.
harder. It's getting
Yeah.
more difficult, which more people are turning to, like, okay, I got to get inbound leads. I got to get online.
Yeah, yeah,
What are your
focus on
thoughts on that?
inbound. You gotta get your inbound set. You gotta focus online, market, get to the people, let them request it. Man, it's called TCPA. The FCC and the FTC have partnered on it. I actually had a chance to have a call. I met and spoke to the former commissioner of the FCC, and you know, candidly behind the scenes, it was just like she said it. She's like, the TCPA is like the most important thing right now at the FCC. Like, they are just,
Mm,
so TCPA, I don't know what it stands for, but it basically regulates texting and calling,
yeah.
cold calls and cold texting. And they each state, here, ready for making this even more complicated. And it's so serious. It's getting so serious that, just so you know, like, I do a lot of webinars, and for the longest time, we would request your phone number when you registered for a webinar, because we saw an increase in show rates for webinars when we texted you as well to let you know that we started. We removed it. I removed it now. I don't ask for phone numbers anymore because each state is now passing its own rules about how much you're allowed to text and
Uh,
cold call. So Maryland, which is where I am, passed their own rules about this just a couple months ago. And I'm like, how the hell am I? It's like, you can't text someone more than twice within a X hour window. You can't text them after 7 p.m. on a weekday or 5 p.m. on a weekend, or, like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm gonna need like a PhD to remember all these, like, these rules, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, and none of the platforms have really innovated their ability to manage this. I really am
Yeah.
shocked that Twilio and all of them haven't just automated this, right? Like, they can tell from an area code where that's going. Like, if
Right.
it's past 7, don't send it, please. Like,
Yeah.
and the fines are pretty drastic. It's per message, and there's a lot of frivolous lawsuits going on now. There's a lot of attorneys that are just doing. I didn't know about this. There's a term called professional plaintiff. I'm like, how
Hmm.
do I get that job?
Yeah.
You work with a legal firm, and your job is to find infractions so that the firm can send notices and lawsuits. And so they're looking for these things. And so I don't want to scare anybody. I mean, I'm doing cold emailing. I mean, we are doing a lot of prospecting for our software company that we launched. And and emailing is still okay. It's the calls and texting that are getting tight. Now, we only call businesses, so our software's sold purely to businesses, so we call within the business hours, and it. cold calling to for B2B is got very different laws. But B2C, it's serious stuff. So what I would encourage everyone to do is, first of all, just go to like ChatGPT or whatever and type in, explain TCPA to me. Like it's gonna give it to you in a great way.
Yeah.
TCPA though, so TC, telephone, C for
Consumer
calls, P for
Protection Act.
protection, and A for
Yeah.
agency. It's not what it stands for,
Yeah.
but I'm just giving you the
Yeah.
acronym TCPA.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing I would do is Google what the state laws are for whichever state you're in that you're doing it, because each state's now starting to pass their own rules. Um,
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well, that's good advice, man. I appreciate that. Like I said, man, I could nerd out on this all day, but we
yeah.
don't have all day. Where can people find you and connect with you? You mentioned the book, the software.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. So, guys, go to don'tsaysthat.com. That's the title of the book, don'tsaysthat.com, and you'll have two options right on that site. Number one is we have a podcast. So if you get intrigued about this stuff and want to get a week by week conversation about the most recent cases, regulations going on, the lawyer Greg Christiansen and I have a really fun chat every week. We also have the book, so you can click there and it could take you straight to the book sales page. Like I said, the book, you can get a digital version for as little as $7. And so, if nothing else, it empowers you with some really good information. It's a fun read. It's not legal talk. It really
Yeah.
is. One of the best feedbacks we've gotten about the book is that it's a quick and fun read, which I take a lot of pride in being a copywriter. So, I
Absolutely. Yeah.
ghost wrote most of it, right, on for myself and for Greg. So we make it a fun read. So story driven, example driven. You understand the concepts thoroughly. And then also software. Let's say you want to take your website and run it through our software to see how it scores, to see if there's violations on it. We give you up to 5,000 words for free. So you can run the scan. Go to complyly.com, COMPLILY.com, complyly.com, and just type in your URL, hit scan, give it a minute, and you'll get a bulk of the report, the first version for free. And even if you decide to upgrade right now, at least, I don't know when you're watching this, but at the moment we're running an amazing launch special. It's just $100 a month to have full access to the whole analysis tool. So
Sweet. Well, I'm super curious, man. I'm gonna go after we're done recording the podcast. I'm gonna go check it out and
do
run
it.
a couple
Yeah,
sites through it. So yeah, I appreciate that.
you got it.
Well, Anik, man, it's been super fun. I really appreciate you
Thank you.
nerding out with our audience and myself on sales psychology, copywriting. I could talk copywriting positioning all day, man. So
Yeah, me
it's
too.
been fun. But
You're
yeah,
welcome.
thanks for hopping on. Anybody, if you like this episode, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, share with a friend, and pass it around. But otherwise, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode.